What?
Hi, I'm Alea. I'm with Veterinary Guardians, and today I'll be talking about Operation Face Hug, which I consider to be the Wild West of sugar glider rescue. So, we will get started. So, a little bit about Sugar Glider Guardians first. I founded it in 2015. We became a nonprofit. Shortly after that, our physical rescues and cyber protection program, we do rescue at our rescue, we do fosters, we do networking, we do a lot of things. Our website is at the bottom there, sugargliderguardians.com, if you want to know more or donate. So again, I'm Alea, I'm the founder and president, and there's my email if you want to email me. Send me a Facebook message so that'll get there faster. All right, so Operation Face Hug. I will talk about it, the who, what, where, why, and when real quick. And then mostly this presentation will focus on the how. And I know a lot of you are really already familiar with it because a lot of you adopted or fostered or drove or transported, yeah, or donated or a lot of things. So who? You Sugar Glider Guardians, and it says countless volunteers / donors. That's what it means, countless. Like so many volunteers and donors. It would not have been possible without them. Brandy and I, that's Brandy, we were kind of the ground game. It also would not have been possible without Brandy. She gave up several months of her life and lived at my house for this rescue. So it was me and her every morning. She put up with a lot from me. And our vet, who is primarily Dr. Frontfield, but also Dr. Rose at ABC Animal and Bird Clinic, which is in Sugar Land, about an hour away from my house. It was a large rescue of 542 gliders. It was mostly intact males. They were mostly in pairs. All the gliders were in pairs except I think we had 2 singles, which Cherie put together. And then almost all standard grays. I would say we had less than 10 that weren't standard grays out of the whole 542. Yeah, it was crazy. They did that on purpose. That wasn't an accident. They came from Hallettsville, Texas, which is a small town about 2 hours outside of Houston. Our rescues in Cypress, Texas, and the gliders ended up all over the United States. I will show you a map later. Why was this necessary? The gliders were, from the best information I got, the gliders were very likely to be euthanized if nobody took them. There was extremely irresponsible breeding and husbandry, and I'll get into that in a couple more slides. So our first trip where we got 140 gliders was on February 28th of this year. And then the next trip where we got 402 gliders was on March 19th of this year. So, and we had moved, I would say we had moved most of the 140 in that 19-day period by the time we got to 402. So it's been a long 7 months. And how? So the how will be pretty much the rest of the presentation. Thank you. Oh, there's a little Western quote for you from Alea Holladay. We share a similar last name, so I thought it was appropriate. Thank you. So how we got involved. I was in the Las Vegas airport coming home from vacation in February, and I got this call from this lady named Nancy, and she worked for a government agency. I can't even remember which one right now. It's not a big one that anybody's heard of. It's a small one. And she said, we were contacted by a veterinarian whose client asked him to do a mass euthanasia, and he contacted the agency for help with that. And she said, "We don't do that. Somebody gave us your name. Can you help rescue what we think is approximately 100 to 200 sugar gliders?" So I said, "Holy crap. That is a lot of gliders." I said, "Yeah, we can probably do it, you know." So she said she would pass on my information to the vet, who would get it to his client, and we would go from there. Quite a while went by. So that started kind of my panic. But with rescue, it's hard to know what's going to happen, or if it's going to happen, or when it's going to happen, or how reliable is this information. So I sort of started kind of in my mind and at my house, maybe preparing a little, but I didn't want to start taking donations, because if we're asking for donations for hundreds of gliders, that's a lot of donations, and if it doesn't happen, I feel bad, right? So it took a couple of weeks, I think, to get in contact with the breeder, which we did. And when she texted back, that's when I started preparing. We set a date, started preparing, gathering more supplies. So we had a limited time to prepare. And we certainly didn't know the extent of what we were getting involved in, but next, please. So a little bit about where they came from. This is a news article from April 6th of this year. I don't know how we got a hold of this. Do you, Randy?
Someone sent it to us.
Someone who knows.
I think it was Tara Wilbur.
Oh, okay. Someone saw this and thought of us. And I don't even think they knew that we were involved in this, but
Oh, my mom called.
Your mom?
It was on the news.
It was on the news.
Because
Mom.
we live down by
Yeah, you
Oaxaca
live
County.
closer. So it's a news article that talks about the horrific conditions that these gliders were in, and it links to the public information USDA reports, which I have highlighted. And I don't know if you can see that picture right in the corner.
That was their bed.
That was what they all slept in. So they had these. It's a PVC pipe with an end cap on it. It's like 3 or 4, maybe 4-inch PVC pipe, and it's about just maybe 8 or 9 inches long.
That's insane.
And that was their bed. So that's what they had in their cage. They had the PVC pipe, the water source, and the food bowl. That's it.
That's it.
I agree, gliders. That's just not my
Yeah.
way.
So that's what they came from. There's another photo on here, but it's not loading. But that's okay. Next, please. Thank you. So you probably can't read this. I'll read it to you. This is from the USDA report from an inspector who went out to that property on February 9th, which is probably around the same time I heard about this, because this is, I think, when the breeder kind of got in trouble.
Yeah.
It says approximately, so the animal care inspector was walking through. From his report, he says approximately 10 deceased sugar gliders were observed in enclosures throughout the facility grounds that were at varying stages of advanced decomposition, ranging from recent to dried out husks to noticeable skeletons. The advanced decomposing bodies, along with buildup of feces, food, hair, and other debris, prove that daily observations are not being conducted. So that's part of it. Next, I'm just going to read you some highlights or lowlights, or however you want it. There was an overall severe lack of sanitation. In most cases, the trays were full to overflowing with food, something that would take days or weeks to accumulate. nesting structures inside the cages, which are round capped pieces of PVC pipe, approximately 4 to 5 inches round. That's what I was describing to you in the photos. Pests and rodents were present and feeding off of the excreta and food waste. The overall smell of waste throughout the enclosed facility rooms was very pungent and overwhelming, causing discomfort to the inspector. The odor was still present on the inspector and his clothes even after several hours after the inspection. And this is all public information, so I'm not telling you anything you couldn't look up yourself. Throughout the facility grounds, there were insects, small black worms, and mice observed in an amount which was too numerous to count. Mice were observed inside a hole in the wall. An uncalculable amount of bugs, appearing to be small roaches, were inside the trays underneath the sugar glider cages. Without adequate pest control, the animals within the facility are in severe risk of being exposed to disease and parasites, which we found out. Sugar gliders are at risk to being injured or killed by rodents or large numbers of insects. Food and enclosures have become contaminated by close of business on 2/11, which is 2 days away from when this inspection report was written. A more effective pest and parasite control plan must be established. And then a few health conditions that were noted. Asymmetrical eyes, the right eye is swollen and the left eye is sunken in. Eye lesions can be very painful and indicative of underlying disease. Let's see. The overall odor and lack of sanitation caused discomfort to both inspectors, and they had to wear N95 masks throughout the inspection. I didn't know any of this until long after we got the gliders. Not that it would have mattered, but just for reference. Over the course of the inspection, several adult sugar gliders were found to have serious eye lesions. The lesions have not been observed by the facility, and therefore no medical care has been provided. These animals are housed in large buildings, divided into several rooms, kept in unsanitary conditions, with extensive buildup of excreta and food all over their cages and an infestation of mice and roaches. And then again, they note some health conditions: sunken right eye completely shut and sunken in, long nails that must be trimmed, watery eyes and sunken left eye, extensive lesion on the left eye, a lot of eye problems. So that's the ones I've highlighted. And then finally, at the end, is a little summary of how many there were, and the count is 4,925. Yeah. So that was how many gliders were at the facility when it was inspected on February 9th.
Wow. 4,900, so almost 5,000.
Yeah. And so as you can see, overall it was extremely bad and smelly. When you got out of the car, you pull up there and you get out of the car and the smell about knocks you over. Like when you get out of your car, it was really terrible. A few things we experienced while we were there, and we didn't get to walk through the whole facility. They kept us in sort of like a little front, like
a walk-in.
Yeah, like the walk-in hallway area with like a little counter and a little sink. But we didn't get to see any of the rooms where they were actually housing the gliders. They brought them all out to us in these little double cages. Some things that we noted when we were there, I remember one of the gliders was bleeding from her mouth when I was putting her in the bag. And they said, "Oh, we'll just give you a different one, it's fine." And I'm like, no, I want her. Give me her. And they said, "Are you sure you don't want to take more? Because if one dies, you'll need one to replace it." And it was obvious that they think of these gliders totally different than we did. And they said we shouldn't have any Joeys because we already took out all the moms with Joeys before you got here, because we're going to sell those. So we did get some moms with Joeys. Brandy was definitely nicer to them than I was. She,
To everybody, that's how
yeah,
we are.
well, so, okay, she's generally nicer than me is what she's saying, but these people in my mind were contemptible, and she's better at hiding her contempt than I was, although I tried really hard. So they said to us, now girls, when you're talking about our sugar gliders, you make sure to tell people they had everything they needed here.
Yeah.
And you kept a straight face?
Yeah.
I'll be sure
I
to tell
probably
them
didn't look
exactly
at
what
it.
they still have a head.
It was a couple in their 80s who had been breeding since the 90s, and their original sugar gliders were imported from Indonesia, and they told us that their mistake in all this was letting the gliders live out their lives after they had been done breeding. That was so. Do you remember them saying that?
Yeah.
And again, they still have, you let them leave the office area with their head on their shoulders.
It was very hard for Leah too.
It was an experience.
You actually left gliders in the custody of these people?
I mean, I couldn't take 5,000.
They wouldn't let us take that many.
I mean, how could I take 5,000?
What happened to the rest? She took a bunch.
So, we'll get there. So we left. It was a very noisy car ride home. Well, two. First 140 and then 402. Very noisy car rides. There was a glider, at least one glider had seizures in the car, in the front seat with Brandy. Yeah, that was the pickup experience. Next, please. So a little bit on the home front, preparing for intake. We'll just go over this quickly. Arrange with the breeder to pick up the gliders. We did that twice. Gather donations. We needed a ton of cages, obviously. A ton of bonding bags because we could most of the gliders were in pairs, and so I could only take as many pairs as I had bonding bags or similar things to carry gliders in. Bottles, toys, wheels, and food, most of those came straight from donations. We set up the cages mostly for the first batch in the downstairs glider room, and then for the second batch, my upstairs bedroom became a full-on glider rescue as well. Each cage got a toy, a pouch, a water bottle, and if they were lucky, they got a wheel. We located local fosters so that the amount of cages I had at my house was not the limiting factor to how many we could take, because we had the fosters come on the same day as pickup. It was chaos. Informed the vet, and I will say when I arranged this, especially the second one, I couldn't get a hold of him. So I just thought, well, I hope he helps us. And he did. And it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. That's what I wrote. And then we sort of established a process, which was every pair gets a colony number. The record keeping kind of evolved a little bit. At first we had 6 colonies per page, and then that was too much. It needed 1 page per colony, so there ended up being about 220 pages of colonies, where we kept all the vet records, neuters, fecals, all that. Next, please. Thank you. Oh, there's some photos of us preparing. Can you guys see the pictures okay? So up in the corner, that's my mom washing some dishes. That's my upstairs bedroom. That's my upstairs bedroom. That's pouch donations. We got so many Amazon items from our wish list. I was probably getting 20 packages a day for a long time. A long time. I mean, it was crazy. This would not have been possible without our donors. And then there's my family and some of Brandy's family eating dinner at my kitchen table after preparing. It was fun. There were fun parts of this. Thank you. So as we went over, we picked up the gliders early in the morning. It was a 2-hour drive from my house. The second time we ate at Waffle House beforehand. I don't remember where the first time. So this is kind of interesting. When they brought us out the gliders in their small double cages, naive me, the first time, was like, okay, well, this will be easy. It's during the daytime. I'll just grab the pouches, put them in the bonding bag, you know, done. No, there were no pouches. And they're like, well, didn't you bring gloves? Well, no, I didn't. But I did bring fleece blankets. So the holes, the openings of these little cages were like that big. And so for 140 gliders, you're like reaching your hand in there with the blanket, like chasing them around, and the hole's only this big. And I ended up, and so I would get it, hand it to Brandy, and she'd put it in the bag and zip it up. And my arm, I mean, not only did I get bitten about 6,000 times, and my fingers were swollen, but my whole arm was black and blue from like knocking up against the cage opening trying to get them. It was not what I expected, but we were more prepared the second time. We did an inventory when the colonies came in, and we provided the fosters with some food, supplies, resources, sent them home with a specific colony number, and then they were told to come back, bring that colony back whenever we tell you for their neuter, and then if you want to adopt, we'll talk about that. So that was for the local fosters, which we used first. If you can see these, like that big middle picture, that's 402 sugar gliders in a pile of bonding bags. It was insane. It doesn't look that big, but that is probably like 10 feet by 5 feet, like in a big old pile. We borrowed my parents' Yukon, and all the seats were out of the back. And with the 402, we could barely fit. Like we were hanging bonding bags like from the rear view mirror. And, like, it was because I didn't want them to get too hot. They're on top of each other.
400, and we had an extra bag, and you were like, "Give me 2 more."
Yeah. Well, I mean, we took every single glider I felt like we could take. And then that little picture in the corner is a table in my garage for the fosters. They would fill out a foster agreement, grab a grocery bag, take what they needed, and go with their gliders. Next, please. So this is a video of us doing inventory. It's about 3 minutes. Do y'all want to see it or no? Yeah. Okay. All right. Hopefully the sound works.
Is it muted?
Only coming from the computer. Okay.
No, hold the little microphone by the little speaker.
See if you can hear it. Male and a female. Obviously, that's the male.
That's a male.
Well endowed.
Hung low.
So, okay, so while this is playing, I'll tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you about it. So, every colony, I checked their nails to see if they needed an immediate nail trim, which most of them didn't. I mean, they never had their nails cut before, but at least most of the nails weren't like growing into the pads. They all needed a neuter. We noted if there were joey bumps, if there were males or females. A lot of them were 2 males. And then I would check their teeth to see if they needed an immediate dental and any other immediate care that they needed. Otherwise, they got a colony number. We wrote down what cage number they were in. So, for example, our cage numbers were D and U. So, like 16D would be 16 downstairs, or 66U would be cage 66 upstairs. So that's how we kept track of what colony went where. I think that's enough of that video. Oh yeah, we did give treats too. Their first ever treats.
They never make fruit or anything.
Yeah, okay. At the facility, they were fed only cat food. Their whole lives, they never had a fruit, a vegetable, a treat. They probably did have some worms, probably not mealworms, but yeah, and roaches, right. They had mice, but they had never had what we would consider a good diet. Okay, so there's 2 videos on that. Both of those are videos. And they're pretty short. You can just play the first one and then play the second one. This is the downstairs glider room.
Here's the glider room, where usually we have
Usually we have those 2 shelves plus those 2 gradations that you just saw. Those are the normal rescues. And then starting here is the extra ones. So that one was the downstairs, and that's not even all of them. We ended up with a lot more cages downstairs. And then the upstairs, which used to be a bedroom with a bed, it's converted. It's converted back to that.
Oh my. Wow. PTSD.
Wow. Good.
And that's your best.
Hey, there's a
I
bag.
mean, you're not wrong there.
Yeah, that was.
Put a bonnet on that and put some more in there.
1 bedroom versus like 5.
I'm gonna need a copy of those videos so I can tell my husband to quit his bitching.
They're actually on the Guardian's page, I think.
Yeah, he's gonna need to see this.
Yeah, and you can see the little PVC pipe in there. So the upstairs ended up having about 70 once we counted the hampers and the. I mean, I will tell you. Well, I'll tell you later. But we had gliders living in all kinds of containers.
It was better than what they started in.
Yeah, that's how we knew from the beginning this rescue was going to be like down and dirty. And we just had it's not how I normally do rescue, but leaving them there was just,
Couldn't say no.
yeah. How could you?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Play video. We did.
And you think it's so little, you only gave them this and gave them that, but they had nothing. So
They
you
had
gave
nothing.
them everything. And look at the size of the cages, they probably are lost.
Yeah,
in that cage.
and many of them, the first few nights didn't sleep in their pouches because they didn't
They know
know what to do with it. So, all right, next, please. Thank you.
Some stuff.
Thank you. All right. So our daily and weekly routines. This is mostly when we had the big group. The 140 was manageable. The 402 was nearly impossible.
Bit of a struggle.
It was crazy. So basically daily, and this is like a Tuesday or Thursday routine. My vet would do 15 neuters for us at a time, and he only does them on Tuesday and Thursdays. So we did 30 neuters a week. So get up early, about 5:15, but usually earlier. So to collect the fecals, label the bonding bags for who's in what bag, and put 15 males in 15 bags, plus collect all the fecals from all those cages. Send Brandy to the vet, which is kind of on her way to work. She wanted to be there by 7, which is when the vet opens. And so then I would, at home, get the dishes out of the cages, because every night they got paper plates and a ceramic water dish, because not all of them knew how to drink from a bottle. So every cage got a paper plate and a ceramic water dish, fresh every night, washed. Start the first dishwasher load. Medicate with the antiparasitics, which usually took about 3 hours to medicate all those gliders. And pain meds, antibiotics, whatever they needed, which was hard to keep track of who needs what. Empty the dishwasher and start the second dishwasher load. Start the laundry, do miscellaneous tasks such as cleaning and paperwork, and then feed the gliders. Brandy's home from the vet at that point. They've been neutered. Put them all back in their cages, medicate them again for the nighttime meds, and then go to bed around like 11 or 12. And then, it was crazy. Weekly tasks included cleaning the cage pans, which took many, many hours, and we had volunteers coming over to do that. Changing the water bottles, and then in between tasks and ongoing, included advertising and transports and trying to find adopters, because if you have no adopters, you're stuck in this situation forever. fundraise, interview adopters, arrange with the fosters to figure out who's going to get neutered when, track the medical care and do the paperwork, separate the gliders who are fighting, mentor the adopters if they need it or set them up with a mentor, check the gliders to see if they need medical care. And then on the weekends, we put together the carriers. Everybody gets new pouches before their transport, so they have a clean pouch for transport the day before the transport. Finalize the adoption agreements, arrange travel, hotel, etc., pack travel bags, drive, and while I'm driving on my road trips, Brandy's at home feeding the gliders. So that's kind of how it went. Wait 1 second, I might have more to add. Like I said, we had gliders living in all kinds of containers. So we had about 100 cages at my house, and I do have the paperwork if y'all want to see. Like, this is just a big pile of the paperwork. This does not include each colony's.
Oh.
No, it's her text message.
This doesn't include each colony's page, but it does include all the medication lists, the transport list, the neuters, fecals. So you can pass it around if you want.
And that's one.
Alea was a rock star at being organized.
I mean, you have to be.
Yeah, I was like, Lord help you if you weren't.
Right?
Every glider got neutered, and there was only one glider that got to the vet twice to be neutered. And obviously, he wasn't neutered twice, but I brought him twice thinking he wasn't neutered, and he was. All right.
Poor
So
guy.
Tony makes these floor rollers, and they're like come in different sizes. I'm not afraid to say it, I had 3 gliders living in the big one of those. They were special needs gliders. They had a head tilt, couldn't really use her back legs. One of them had a huge swollen head. I'll show you pictures. They lived in there for several weeks. I had gliders living in hampers, baskets, bins, because what happened was, we did no nail trims because it was too overwhelming for me. No playtime, sorry. A lot of times they didn't all get eyes on them every day, but we did the best we could. We fed Happy Glider kibble and a fruit or veggie sometimes as a shortcut, and I don't recommend this, but just as a shortcut for a few months we used baby food every other night because it was just easier. And I will say, when we took the 402, I didn't have that many cages. I didn't have 201 cages to put them in, but I took a calculated risk, and I thought I can either leave half these gliders here, I can take 200, or I can take 400 and put them 4 to a cage and roll the dice. So on that day, we put them 4 to a cage, cold intros. They'd never met before, and it didn't go as bad as you might think it would, but it still wasn't awesome.
There was some tears.
Yeah, I do remember standing in my glider room upstairs, looking around at the 70 or 80 cages up there, and everybody's fighting, and I have no more containers, and I'm just like, I've made a mistake. Had a nervous breakdown or 2 or 3. I'm like, what did we do?
You did great. You did
It's
great.
over now, so that's better.
My quad's good.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
Do they all have homes?
Most of them have homes, but we'll go over that. So if you want to be 6, it's just another Western quote. You can read it or not. Next. So I'll talk about the vetting and medical a little bit. I'll talk about the pictures first. So I don't know if you can see him up in the corner. Some of my pictures aren't loading. Darn. Him up in the corner. You can see his top 2 teeth are on the right side and his bottom 2 teeth are on the left side. He probably had at least 3 of those pulled, and I don't know who that was. Up in this corner, that's a pouch. So there was one of them who had these finger-like things growing out of her pouch. It wasn't cancerous. It was just what they call hyperplasia, which is just like more tissue than you should have growing. So the vet lasered it off, sent it for pathology. It was just fine. The one in the pink background, that's Marshmallow. She's still at my house. She has hyperplasia in her mouth, so her face was always. I took her for 3 dentals, and I'm like, she's swollen. You gotta pull some teeth or something. She's swollen, but it's hyperplasia in her mouth. She was also the only one that I know of who she was so huge with 2 Joeys, and then they had me almost out of pouch, and then one day her pouch was smelly, and I just peeled those Joeys out of there, and they were both dead. And she didn't do it. She didn't do it. They had not a mark on them, and I just felt so bad for her, especially being pregnant. And then there's some eye issues, and then this glider down in the corner, he looks pretty frail. So for neuters, we did 30 neuters per week. Laser palm off neuters, so there was no self-mutilation whatsoever. We did not use cones, we did not separate. Laser palm off neuters. Fecals were also done at this time.
Yeah, he had those.
When we did the fecals, almost all the gliders came back with multiple parasites. So they almost every single one of them had tapeworms, which is pretty uncommon in gliders, but they get it from eating mice and roaches. So they, we had Giardia, tapeworms, trichomonas, spirochetes, which don't hurt anything, but it's just something I'd never seen before. So the anti-parasitics that we used were Panicure, Flagyl, and Drontal, and any combination of those. All the gliders, especially from the second batch, got at least 2 rounds of Panicure even before their first fecal, because it was just not worth. I mean, they just had to have it anyways. And plus, the fecals are not perfect. We couldn't get a fecal on every glider. We did colony fecals. And this is at the advice of my vet. He told me, this is a quote from him, he's like, this is herd mentality. There is no way you're gonna get fresh poop from every glider on their day when they're supposed to poop for you. It's just, you're not gonna do it. So we're gonna do group fecals, we're gonna treat it like a herd, and that's exactly what we did. And the fecals aren't perfect, even if they did poop for you, and you got the fresh poop, not all the parasites show up on every poop. So
you're looking for eggs when you look at it, when you look at a fecal.
So they don't always show up. So we just did preventative and after preventative and like across the board. And then if they were still testing positive, we would break down the group into smaller groups or individuals and see what exactly they needed. But the 3 meds we used were Panicure and Flagyl, which are more common in gliders, and then Drontal, which is not that common, but tapeworms aren't that common, and Drontal treats tapeworms. So Drontal is kind of nice because it's only 2 doses. It's one day, and then 14 days later, 1 dose. The Panicure is 1 dose daily for 3 days, and the Flagyl is twice a day for 5 days. That took a long time on, when we had 350 or 400 gliders. So like I said, multiple meds, multiple rounds per group until fecals were clean. All the glider groups got a clean fecal at my house before they were adopted. That's a non-negotiable. We also did a bunch of dentals because, as with any gliders, I was expecting their teeth to be a lot worse than they were, but we still did a lot of dentals. I was lucky because my vet included dental checks on all the males before the neuter, free of charge. So that saved us a ton of money, but I did the dental checks on the females. I would say probably 1/3 to 1/2 of them got brought in for dentals because even if their teeth were iffy, I brought them in. Let's see. So all males and many females got dental checks and teeth pulled if necessary. On the second group, when I had all the fighting, what I was not expecting was the subsequent waves of so many gliders with infections from their wounds because they were fighting. So we had a lot of infections. I don't regret doing it that way because I think if we lost any from the fighting and subsequent infections, it was only 0 or 1 or 2 gliders of the whole thing. But we treated a lot of infections, and I learned that I can detect the infections almost immediately by smell. I can go up to a cage, smell the cage, and know, like, somebody in there has got a wound that is infected. So that's, there were a lot of eye problems, especially in the second group. Ulcers, abscesses, glaucoma, disease, There was frailty and malnutrition. A lot of the gliders, some males, but mostly the females, had just been bred and bred and bred and bred. So their bone density was low. They were tiny. They're 50 grams. They're just tiny. And unknown ages on all these. Other problems: hyperplasia, as I mentioned, self-mutilation, like Meadow. She died. She ripped her abdomen open. Cancer, unknown causes. We did get a lot of necropsies, but sometimes when you find them in the morning, dead at the bottom of the cage, it's too late for a necropsy. But when it wasn't too late for necropsy, we got them. Throat infections, GI tumor, seizures, those are all some of the medical issues we had. Next, please.
What were some of the deaths? Some of the necropsies?
What was what?
The results from the necropsies.
Oh, it was very, one of them was GI tumor. Some of them were like abscess behind the eye, which I'll talk about very specifically. There was not really like a pattern. It was all sort of just one-offs, like liver problem, or there wasn't really a pattern, which I kind of would have liked to see, but there wasn't.
There wasn't a lot of deaths.
No, there weren't a lot of deaths. Anyways, we'll get into that in a minute. So our total veterinary expenditures on Operation Facehug gliders was $35,021. So that doesn't include anything that the doctor spent on them, or it doesn't include any of the other gliders that we had during this that did not come from Operation Facehug. So 35,000. Covered things like neuters, fecals, dentals, eyes, eye treatment, medication, necropsies, and surgeries. And I went through and I tried to get an exact number for y'all, and I went through the entire 247-page PDF that my vet sent me of all the treatments. And so that means we also fundraised about that much during that time too. So I'll go over a few of the specific gliders now that we had. They did not all get names, but they did get names if I thought they were going to die. So, or they did die. They got postmortem names. So Purple and Royal, the royal spokesmice, as Dan calls them. Purple was the only one from the first group who died before she got home, and I named her because on the second day we had her, she was like laying next to the water bowl, and I just knew she wasn't doing well. She did last a couple more months after that, and Royal was her partner. So they were chosen because of Purple's condition shortly after arrival. They're the kind of the mascot of Operation Facehug. Purple ended up, I don't know if you can see this bottom picture, but her right eye just got like humongous, and she did get vet treatment for that, but she died nonetheless shortly after that. And then the Bradfords adopted Royal, who had abscesses on his face at my house. Then we treated those, adopted him out, and then he still gets abscesses on his face, which the Bradfords deal with. So that's them.
We're winning.
Yeah, he looks great. I saw him yesterday. Ireland, she was one of my favorites. I detected that something was wrong with her because of smell. She ended up having an abscess behind her eye, which is kind of why her head was slightly higher on one side. I could smell it, but we couldn't get to it. It was not operable. The antibiotics didn't touch it, and I really wanted her to make it, but she didn't. Flicker. So that's Flicker. Her mate's name is Flame. She's okay. Actually, the Brames have her. She was adopted. So she had an eye problem also. It was kind of an unknown eye problem. He just said it was significant corneal disease of unknown origins. And it did not look like that at first. That graphic picture is actually a result of me, and I'll tell you how. My job was to, because I knew she had an eye problem, I took her to the vet. My job was to give her eye drops every day, I think twice a day or 3 times. And it got crusty, of course, and so her eye would crust close. So my job was to first use some saline or warm water to kind of get the crust off, and then force her eyelids open to get the drops in. Well, what we didn't know was that the globe, her actual eyeball, had some sort of lesion on it, making it extra poppable. So when I'm like gently trying to work her eyelids open, suddenly there's like a pop, and it looked like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I popped her eyeball. And that's the only time I texted my vet's personal cell phone number, and I said, Dr. Fronfield, I popped her eyeball. He said, eyeballs don't rupture like that. You didn't do that. And I'm like, all right. But he said, bring her in tomorrow. All right, okay, whatever you say. And I brought her in, or Brandy dropped her off or something, and he calls me, he's like, so, her eyeball did rupture, but it's not your fault, because it had this whatever condition making it extra fragile. But that was one of the really traumatic moments for me. I mean, when you think you popped your glider's eyeball, it's horrible. So that was the one and only time I texted my vet. Okay, next. But she's doing great now. She can't see out of it, but she's doing cool. So this is Sprinkles and Daffodil and Crash, who lived in the, you can see the pink floor roller. They lived in there. They did great. Sprinkles is, you can see her kind of the main glider in the corner. Daffodil, she had a head tilt and couldn't really walk very well. Daffodil she couldn't move her back legs at all. And then Crash was not from Operation Facehug, but he was one I picked up on the way home from an Operation Facehug transport. And you can see, I don't know if you can see these photos, but he's got like this profile and it just goes up. He had probably about like that much swelling on the pus, like a pus pocket on the top of his head, and he wasn't doing well either. So that's actually a video. If you could play that top one of her sitting on or her walking on the counter. Yep, it's really short. You can see her just kind of, like she's so skinny, first of all, but she doesn't move her back leg. She just...
We thought she was going to die that night. She was screaming.
Yeah, that's right. We found her screaming on the floor, curled up by herself. She was screaming and crabbing. I did think she was going to die. But she's still alive. They got adopted by Christy in Reno. They're all doing great. Christy saved Crash's life too. We had treated him here. He had a really bad ear infection, which we thought was all gone. We adopted him out, and then it came back for her, and she did an amazing job with them. So they're all still alive, those ones. They're the lucky ones too. Next, I think the last specific glider I want to talk about is Hercules. So you can see in the top two left pictures, Hercules he was in one of the cages I was fighting. He was getting really beat up. He had a lot of skin that fell off, probably like a dime-sized amount of skin that fell off from the middle top of his head. But it did grow back. His stripe was just a little bit crooked. And then he was supposed to leave on the last transport in the morning, and he was out, and we look at him, I'm like, why is your tongue sticking out, my friend? And we tried to give him a treat and wouldn't go back in, so we found him like that, on the bottom with his tongue sticking out. And then, and that's how he looked too. And then I was looking at him, trying to figure out why his tongue would not go back in, and I said, where are your bottom teeth? They're not there. And oh my gosh, your bottom teeth are stuck inside your tongue. And it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in a glider. So what happened was, here, you're gonna be my demonstrator. Just give me your hand and put it up like that. That's the teeth, and the tongue is supposed to go out like this, out of the mouth like this. What happened is it went like this and went like this, and stopped. So his teeth were all the way completely, not through his tongue, not like skewered, but inside his tongue, so that you couldn't even see them. So I didn't know how long he'd been like that, like all night or just a couple hours. He obviously wasn't going on the transport, but I carefully pulled his tongue off of his teeth, and it went back in, and then we substituted that colony. She adopted a different colony. He went to the vet, and the vet's like, yep, can't find anything wrong with him. So he's also still at my house. That was really a bizarre experience. That goes to the check your gliders every day because weird things can happen. Next, please. Thank you.
Eating your teeth.
So we'll move on to the adoptions and transports. This was a big part of the operation. We could not have done it without so much help, so many adopters, so many transporters. Millie and Victoria probably drove the most miles of anybody, maybe even me, on these transports. We did so many trips. I drove from Houston to Lubbock, Houston to Georgia twice, Houston to Florida, Houston to Alabama twice, Houston to Louisiana 3 or 4 times, Houston to Minnesota, Houston to Tennessee, Houston to Arkansas. And those are in back, all those in back. And those are just the ones I can remember. Transports reached approximately 36 states. We did everything possible to make sure the gliders only spent 1 night in their carriers. 4 gliders per carrier max. If there was five in the colony, they got 2 carriers. Transports were highly organized by Sandra. She did her flow charts and her spreadsheets so that everybody knew where they're supposed to be and what time. We had many transporters. Millie and Victoria, they're rock stars on the road. Most adopters adopted between 2 and 6 gliders. They've had mostly positive experiences with their intros. There was one pretty horrific one, and she wanted to rehome the operation based on gliders after that, and that was a really unfortunate incident. But the rest have been good. We interviewed hundreds of applicants. If you interviewed with me, you probably know that I'm very, very, very choosy. So a lot of time was spent on interviewing. Adopters fed or still feed a variety of diets and have varying levels of experience. We've adopted 2 people who've had gliders for 20 years. We've adopted 2 new owners through this rescue operation. I like new owners and people who've had gliders for 20 years. But I like new owners because they don't know anything, so you can teach them the right things. The adoption process included a questionnaire, follow-up questions and photos, a potential interview, like a Zoom interview with Sandra, and then approval, and then they do the adoption agreement, and then they're approved. Next, please. So here's some photos of our transports. You can see Sandra's flow chart. That's typical of what a transport flow chart looks like up in the corner. Those are the carriers you can see. And those are some happy adopters and, at that moment, happy transporters, too.
I don't see me up there.
Yeah, what?
I don't see me up there.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's rude.
Well, I couldn't take any pictures of you because I didn't see you. Sorry. But, anyways, I like how happy everybody looks. Okay, next. I want to touch a little bit on volunteer efforts and donations. We seriously could not have done it without the volunteers and the donations. I mean, I bet you half the people in this room helped with this operation. It would not have been possible without the network and the fosters and without this big effort. There were countless miles driven, I mean thousands and thousands. For transports, for vet appointments, dozens of short-term foster homes, that's a typo. Several long-term foster homes. Cherie had a pair for, how long did you have them? 6 months, yep. Nancy and Denise still have some pairs. Sandra, I still have some. Hundreds of hours of hands-on help at the rescue for preparation, setup, cleaning, tear down. My dad power washed so many cages for us. Hundreds of Amazon wishlist purchases. Over 250 pouches donated, over 100 toys donated, hundreds of pounds of food donated or paid for, several people helping interview, and that's not even including my own admins and moderators. Many thousands of dollars donated, hundreds of hours spent fundraising, organizing, and promoting, sharing my posts, and several months of Brandy's life living at my house.
My husband's happy I'm home.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you to everyone who helped. Thank you. If you helped, I'm thanking you. person with right now. Next, please. So here's a map of all the adopters, where the Operation Face Hug gliders have ended up. We still have about maybe 15 colonies who need homes. Not all at my house, but they, you can see they're as far up as New Hampshire, and as far over as Reno, as far down as almost to Miami, and as far up as northern Minnesota. So we went everywhere for these gliders. Thank you. There's just a few little numbers. We had 30 adopters in 31 states. We adopted to 132 different households. That's an average of 3.6 gliders per household. We did 308 neuters, 70 plus tooth extractions, and that's counting the individual teeth. Although if they got more than 3 teeth extracted, the vet just marked 3 because I think they, I don't know if they charged me by the tooth or what, I don't know. But there was a lot of teeth pulled. Total gliders, 542, that's excluding Joey's. Total gliders in foster, right now we have 37 gliders still in foster. We had about 12 Joeys out of the pouch at the rescue. They were all female, every last one of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was great.
I know, that was great. And then for the breakdown, we had about 313 males and 229 females, so that's about 58% male and 42% female. And the reason we didn't have quite that many neuters is because a couple of the fosters wanted to adopt and just said, I'll get the neuter done myself. And I trusted them to actually do it. A couple of the males died before they were able to get a neuter, and a couple of the males did not have a palm, even though they were males. And we weren't going to go digging. So, there you go. That's the numbers. Thank you. So if you're looking to adopt, those little blue dots are where we have gliders. And there's actually 2 colonies here, adoptable colonies, right now. Nancy has one and Denise has one. If you would like to apply to adopt, talk to me. I would love for them to find homes really soon. And you're here and they're here, and
Hey, over here you can do a hands-on extra with
Yeah, you can meet them. I'll trim their nails for you. We'll do anything.
Nails are already trimmed.
Oh, even better. Nancy trimmed their nails for you.
And I got a binding pouch, Brittany.
Yeah.
Binding pouch.
I mean, we can hook you up. You just let me know. You will have to go through, I will ask you questions though and stuff.
See you in the end for an interview over in the corner, please.
Yeah. See me in the corner.
Can you pack so we take on everything?
And then this is just a little. Oh, my names didn't show up. There were supposed to be a list of names under there, but I think if I use emojis, it doesn't work or something. They have little purple hearts in between them. But there was about 20 that we lost at the rescue. But it wasn't bad considering the conditions they came from and how many there were. It was less than expected, but they all got every glider who died got buried in my glider graveyard in my backyard, and they got some flowers from my garden. So we lost, I can read you their names. They're Purple, Mackie, Boomer, Wilmer, Hallie, Charlie, Rosie, Alton, Cookie, Timber, Ireland, Meadow, Abby, Summer, Calla, Marcus, Susie, Winnie, Stormy, Erebus, Hesperus, Romeo, Boo Boo, Samson, Becca, Cece, and Opie. Those are the ones we lost. All right. Oh, how did you do that?
Magic.
You spoke them into.
That's amazing. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So a few lessons learned.
They are forgotten.
A few lessons learned from Operation Face Hug. First, we'll start with the medical. Learn the signs of infection. There were a couple gliders who had 2, I think, and also 2 in foster who had throat infections. And when you check your gliders and when you see your gliders, you don't see their throat. You just don't see it. And so it's important when you're checking your gliders to check their throat too, because it was a bizarre thing, but it happened multiple times. And then also, if it smells bad, it is bad. That was one of the biggest things I learned, was how to smell for infection. Check your gliders every day. Check underneath the chin. Don't lube it, leave it. So most of the operation base head males had their penises hanging out all the time. All the time. They did not go back in. They weren't black, they weren't dried up, they weren't necrotic, that's just them. If I would have lubed all of it, we would have probably had more problems than we started with. So I do not lube penises that look healthy no matter how long they hang out for. Yeah. Learn how to treat common things yourself. This was a big one. If your vet will trust you, if you can get your vet to trust you, instead of mixing up the Baytril for you, and then it lasts 30 days, ask him if he'll give you the straight Baytril, teach you how to mix it yourself, and then your bottle of Baytril will last you years instead of a month. Right? So, and then if you see an infection, you can use it. And it's so much better. And I know it's because we have experience that our vet does that. I mix my own Flavomox, I mix my own Baytril, I mix my own Loxicam, but your vet might do it for you too, and it saves time, it saves money, it saves gliders. It's excellent. So learn how to treat common things yourself. You know, keep your eye drops, know how long medications last. Some of them last a very, very long time, especially antiparasitics. So that's the medical takeaways that I came up with. Other ones are recognize that there's a problem with unwanted sugar gliders. Focus on what you can do to help. I mean, after rescuing these gliders from a place that had about 5,000, I have a different view on it than most people, but you can have your own view on what you can do to help and, you know, how unwanted sugar gliders should be cared for or whatever. But just from my perspective, there is a big problem with unwanted gliders, so just at least acknowledge that in your head and think about it. Keep your focus, keep the main thing, as my pastor says. He's not talking about gliders when he says that, but keep your focus on your mission. Don't focus on what everybody's talking about on Facebook, what you're doing wrong. You know, did you get a fecal on every single glider, Alea? You know, like, just don't focus on it. Keep your focus on your focus, and that's what you need to do. Build and maintain a relationship with a great veterinarian. This is really important. You need a relationship with a veterinarian, or 2 or 3. I would say if we didn't have a relationship with our vet and he was charging us full price, we probably would have paid easily 5 times as much for their care as we did pay, because the Neuters were way more expensive. He gives us a great deal on them, especially if we do a group. We probably sent 2 to 4 extra gliders per week that were not on the schedule. He could have charged us $100 or $150 emergency fee for every single one, and I'd never once paid an emergency fee because we have a relationship. Let's see. So a relationship with your vet is super important. And do nice things for them. Bring them kolaches or, you know, donuts or whatever.
As a vet tech, that works wonders.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Bean, donuts. Kolaches, whatever. Candy, wine. Bring them stuff.
Wine.
After work.
I was going to say, Daryl,
Yeah.
let me do anesthesia now.
A fruit plate. Just be nice to them. And the next one is do it well, even if you can't do it perfectly. As I said before, we knew this wasn't going to be perfect, but I feel like we did a good job. So ask for or hire help and thank your people. So people aren't going to help you and get on board if they don't feel like you appreciate them. Thank your people. And if you need help, hire it. Go to your church teenagers and be like, hey, I'll pay you $15 an hour to clean out glider cage pants. And they might take you up on it. So, and that helps a lot. And planning makes all the difference. We couldn't have done it without planning. And know your limits. So we knew we couldn't take, we knew we couldn't take 5,000. We didn't even know there was 5,000, but I knew there were more than 402 when I left there the second time. Know what you can do. I don't think I could have taken one more glider and kept my sanity. Like, not one single more glider and kept my sanity.
Sure you could have.
Are you gonna take any more from them?
Actually, I don't know what happened to the rest. I have not been in contact with her. I can't take any more. It's become hard for me to find homes.
She has a baby on the way.
And yeah, I've got to focus on other things. I feel so sad that we could only take about 10% of what they had, or that we only took about 10% of what they had, but
That's 10% that was saved.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they did say that they were getting rid of them, to, like, oh, a breeder came and picked 200 up this morning, and I don't
They sell
know.
them in bulk to breeder stores.
Oh, they sell them in bulk, okay.
Are they done?
They,
Oh, yes.
the USDA told them they need to completely redo their facilities or shut down, and they're in their 80s, so they're shutting down. But the USDA cannot, I don't think the USDA could confiscate all those gliders. I mean, that's too many. Nobody could do it. So that's it. And then my last few slides are just some photos that I'll explain to you, and then I'll take questions. So this is just some of what Operation Face Hug involved, and since I don't need this anymore, I can come up here and show you. There's some tags for the carriers. This is how my dishwasher looked twice a day. These are bags of food in my house, a whole big pot of chicken hearts. This is going to the vet with all the bonding bags labeled, syringes, just tons of paperwork. And there's some of the gliders. Yeah, there's a few that I know. So that one was Alton. He was one of my favorites. He did not make it. That one was Bambi up there looking out of the cage. Like, is this all for me? That's what she was saying. I know it. And she's adopted. They just loved the yogurt and the strawberries and the sweet potatoes and the treats. They loved it all.
That one in the cork was sleeping in there.
Yeah, they'll sleep in the cork. They'll sleep in the corner of the cage. They'll sleep wherever. Yeah, and that's some of the Operation Face Hug gliders. Some more. There's one in a carrier on a transport. Eating oranges, eating yogurt, sweet potato, asking for treats. This is Megara.
It's mine.
That's Hercules' wife, Megara. I think that is it. Now I will take your questions, if I have time to take questions. Okay. All right. Questions?
Would you all still need to recover from all of this?
What do we need to recover? Our bank account took a bit of a hit, so we're going to do some fundraising, and then we need adopters.
Only if I win the cage. I got told that.
Oh, it's going to be rigged now. Oh, Leah's rigging it. She about to sneak a ticket. She about to sneak you a ticket, and that's the one she's going to pull.
We could all buy her a ticket.
Yeah.
You know, I do have 4 OFH babies here right now. So, I don't know if they need siblings yet.
But we need adopters for the last few. And I think that, we're mostly recovered. My dad really did an awesome job power washing cages, and there's a few cages and wheels on my driveway I still have to wash. My upstairs bedroom has recovered mostly. Any more questions? Amberly.
If you could go back to February
Yep.
No, we're not.
and know it all,
What happened?
what would you do differently?
What would I do differently?
If anything at all, and if there's nothing you would do differently,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
It's not big things. It's, I would check under the chin. I think I could have saved probably 2 from death if I had seen the infection. And it was under the skin, under the chin. Like, not even with a wound,
So cute.
just under the skin.
Okay.
I would have tried to take more.
Of course.
I don't know. I wouldn't do a lot differently. We lucked out and tried real hard.
I think you did
I
great.
think you did a wonderful job.
Anyone? Yes.
Just kind of curious, when this couple was having all these gliders, where were they all going?
They sold some to Pocket Pets historically, but Pocket Pets have downsized. So I think that was also part of their problem, was that the market for gliders kind of went down. And as you get more gliders, you get more gliders. If you don't it's an exponential problem. And also COVID hit, and they said COVID made it so that they didn't have very many employees.
They had 5,000 gliders and 2 employees.
Yeah, 5,000 gliders and 2 employees. And they're, yeah, so I can't remember your question even, but
They had so many.
I know.
How were they, were they just not keeping track of all the joys or?
oh no, they did not keep track of anything.
They weren't track of anything.
They didn't keep, they had no paperwork, no, they didn't.
Lucky to throw some food in there.
They didn't, I don't even,
I thought you
yeah, I don't even think they got fed every day. I don't think they got fed every day. I don't even know if they got fed every other day. The answer is I don't know.
They were eating each other.
Yeah.
Are you?
Any-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you still finding that the females that have come out of OFH are still on the small side and are not fluffing out like the boys are?
Yes. A lot of the females are just small and frail, and I think there's not going to be any remedy for that. They're just going to be small and frail until.
No matter what I've done
Yeah.
or what I've fed has helped anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know they're healthy. I've had their poops checked. I know
Yep.
they don't have any parasites, so I know that's not an issue. And I feed BML. I know there's plenty of food for them to eat, so they're not missing anything.
It's
I
nothing
just-
you're doing.
Yeah, I was just saying, I sampled
They're
them with
just tiny.
avocado and we can't put
Yeah.
on waste.
They're
Yeah.
just little.
They can eat and eat. Do you have a question? No. Okay. Amberly, you have another one?
How many have we had any long-term stasis babies come out yet?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't, but maybe the adopters have.
I do know one girl who, she got hers on the second transport with me, and it was almost 2 months, maybe close to 3, before Joey finally, she could see a baby doll.
Service. Okay.
Yeah, I do know of one female with Anita who lives near me who had one set of Joeys and then she had another set of Joeys, or one single Joey that time, but also all girls. But yeah, we haven't had any Joeys recently, and it's been several months since all the males have been neutered.
It can be years. Like,
Yeah, I mean, stay tuned.
yeah, I was just curious if anything else had cropped out. Crazy.
If there's no more questions, I'll be done. Thank you, Alea. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.